When we talk about the U.S. housing market, we usually get bogged down in things like interest rates and construction costs. But what if the real story is a lot simpler? What if it's really just about people, where they're choosing to live, and just as importantly, the places they're leaving behind? Well, today we're following the people to figure out the future of housing. So, what on earth connects a moving truck rumbling down a highway in Texas with a change in U.S. immigration policy? I mean, they seem like totally separate worlds, right? But it turns out they're actually two sides of the very same coin. And together, they are seriously shaking up the American housing market as we know it.
You know, it really all boils down to one simple truth. If you want to understand what's happening in real estate, you've got to follow the people. The entire market from top to bottom is shaped by where Americans are moving, the places they're abandoning, and the big reasons behind those choices. So how do we know all this? Well, we're digging into the very latest numbers from the U.S. Census Bureau. This data covers the year that just ended on July 1st, 2025, and it gives us the most up-to-date snapshot we have of where people are on the move right now.
Okay, first up, let's talk about a trend that probably feels pretty familiar to a lot of you, what we're calling the Great Domestic Shuffle. This is that constant churn of Americans moving within the country. It's like a huge national game of musical chairs, and it is absolutely creating some clear winners and losers among different states and cities.
And wow, this data paints a really clear picture, doesn't it? On one side, you've got the population magnets, places like the Pacific Northwest, the suburbs of Texas, and a huge swath of the Southeast. Think the Carolinas, Georgia, Tennessee, Central Florida. They are just pulling in new residents. But on the other side of the coin, we're seeing a real exodus from places like California, the High Plains, the southern Mississippi River region, and even the Miami metro area.
Now, for a lot of these places, this domestic shuffle, well, it isn't exactly a brand new story. This has been the general trend for a little while now. But in 2025, something else happened. Something different. A new, very powerful factor came into play and created what the source material calls a sudden shock to the system. And believe me, it is disrupting everything.
And what was that shock? Well, it came from a sudden, and I mean sudden, drop in immigration. This was a totally unexpected twist in the population story, and it added this whole new, very complicated layer to the housing market, changing the game for a lot of American cities.
Just take a look at this chart. It shows you just how widespread that shock really was. You can see between 2024 and 2025, the rate of international immigration took a nosedive. We're talking about nearly every single county in the United States seeing its immigration rate either fall or completely stagnate. This was not a regional issue, it was a nationwide slowdown.
So, you're probably asking, what was going on at the time? Well, according to the source material, these trends happened to coincide with some pretty major policy shifts. We saw stricted border enforcement during the last few months of the Biden administration, and then during the first months of the Trump administration, we saw new, more aggressive detention and deportation policies. All of this contributed to that nationwide slowdown in the rate of new arrivals. Okay, but let's be super clear on this point because it's important. This does not mean immigration just stopped cold. What we're talking about is a change in the rate of new arrivals. For years and years, a lot of big cities relied on international immigration to act as a buffer, to offset the number of their own residents who were moving away. Well, now that buffer is getting a whole lot smaller.
And all of this leads us to the absolute heart of our story today, what we're calling the double whammy. This is what happens when that domestic shuffle we talked about collides head-on with this new immigration shock, in the very same place at the very same time.
So let's break down exactly what we mean by a double whammy. Think of it like this. A housing market is getting hit from two different directions. First, it's losing its own residents. People are packing up and moving to other parts of the country. And second, at the exact same time, that traditional cushion of new arrivals from abroad is shrinking fast. It's a really powerful one-two punch that puts a serious squeeze on housing demand.
All right, this table gives us some perfect real-world examples of what that looks like. Let's take a market like Miami. We already saw that it's losing domestic movers. More people are leaving for other parts of the U.S. than are coming in. But on top of that, it's also seeing a really sharp decline in its immigration rate. And you can see the same pattern holds true for parts of California and the High Plains. They are literally facing shrinking demand from both directions at once.
Okay, so we've got all these population trends, people moving here, immigration slowing down there, but why should you actually care? Well, this is where we connect all those dots back to the housing market, because these shifts, they have huge consequences for homeowners, for renters, for builders, and honestly, for the entire economic future of our cities. So if you're going to take away just 3 key things from all this, let them be these. First, housing market growth is fracturing. It's not one single national story anymore. It's a patchwork of totally different regional realities. Second, some of those markets are getting hit with a demand problem from two directions at the same time. And third, that population buffer that immigration gave us for so long, it's weakening in the very places that used to depend on it the most.
Now, of course, it's important to keep some perspective here. As the source material points out, the housing market is subject to a host of factors other than just population movement. And that's true. Things like interest rates, local housing supply, jobs, they all matter a ton. But, and this is the key part of the quote, this population story is one crucial part of the picture. It's a part we absolutely cannot afford to ignore if we want to have any clue what's coming next.
And that leaves us with a final, absolutely critical question for the future. Because this isn't just about some data from 2025, it's about the path we're on. As these powerful trends, this domestic shuffle and this international migration shift continue to play out, the fundamental question becomes which American cities are set up to thrive in this new reality and which ones are at risk of being left behind.